Welcome to this brand new edition of the You ORNS post-match. Watford fall to defeat here to start the brand new year at QPR by a score of 3 goals to 1. A very, very poor and unconvincing Watford. It is, unfortunately, we end 2024 giving up at least 2 goals, and we do it again to start this brand new year. Queen's Park Rangers deserve to win the game. Watford's defence is continuing to be the story of these last 4 games, where we have now conceded 8 goals in the last 4. It's been a really poor moment for Watford. We now have problems holding on to any kind of momentum after we've scored for the second game running now. Watford have scored only within 3 minutes of that goal that they scored to concede again. This is something that's become a troubling sign. We saw this the last game out against Cardiff. Cardiff had scored, and then we come back and score, and then literally 3 minutes after that, we concede again. We did that today, scored to cut the deficit to 2-1, and then QPR within about 2.5 minutes or less than that, scored to make it 3-1. That's the hammer blow. And Watford fans, welcome. A very happy new year to you all here on X as you join us, and also on YouTube Live as you join us there as well, as Watford fall to defeat the first of this brand new campaign, or I should say this brand new year, as Watford fall 3 goals to 1. I think there were a number of storylines today. Otto Bar was chomping at the bit to play some football because he was absolutely the only player that had the know-how and the knack scoring for Watford in the game. But by then, this game was really over. Watford's troubles continue conceding goals first 5 minutes. That's been a massive problem all season, pretty much all season. It went away for a few games where we went nearly 3 whole games without conceding at all. And now we've come back again these last 4 games on the spin and have conceded each of those games at least 1 goal in the first 10 minutes. Today it was the first 5 minutes. We have had a very poor job indeed now of managing to get through the first 10 minutes of the game without conceding. Remember, against Cardiff, it was 56 seconds. We have had a whale of a time, really torrid time, trying to look. We concede goals too easily in this league. Daniel Batman today didn't look confident out there. Bio's finishing a problem again. Look, he's done the hard yards, but again, he should have had a goal in this game. Pollock should have had one as well. We had Barr hit the bar late on after he had scored, and look, we don't have enough incisiveness and clinical stuff going forward, do we? There was some really good work by Barr today, and somehow no Watford player gets on the end of his really good endeavor out there. He was the one player that had some ideas. Vata didn't start. I think he tried Vata when he came on, but there wasn't enough from him. Tom Cleverley, I think, waited too long to make subs today. Watford fans, what say you on this New Year's Day? 2025 comes in, but Watford's goal rate really, in terms of conceding, continues to be poor. We continue to concede too many goals. What's your point and what's your view on this performance by Watford, on this outcome? Your thoughts on the January transfer window. How much realistically do you expect that we can do in the transfer market this month? And also, who should stay and who should go from this team and from this lineup? Should Tom Cleverley have shuffled the lineup a bit more? I know he was restricted with Loser. He had some kind of knee issue. Vata could not start. He had a calf issue, but he was well enough at least to actually play in the game. Tom Ince, invisible today, I think, from all intents and purposes. And then, look, we just don't have any cohesion out there. We don't have, I think, a sustained period of time where we can put some trouble on Queen's Park Rangers in their defense. We had some moments in that second half where we improved, but unfortunately, we just did not do enough in this game to get things going from a footballing standpoint going forward. I thought that we were very vulnerable at the back once again, and I thought that Kayembe spent too much time once he came on arguing with the referee and the linesman. It doesn't help you. Kayembe's been disappointing for me, very disappointing lately. I want to take your requests now for the Watford supporters on X and on YouTube. If you want to read your comments out there, please do. I will be reading them out. David has joined us on X, and he will go first for the new year. David, welcome and Happy New Year to you on X. on You Orns post-match.
I agree with your comments that you mentioned so far. I think it's pretty obvious the trend obviously that we're seeing against teams towards the bottom of the table. We seem to get involved in the ugly side of the game. We managed to just come from it forefront. I thought we dealt with that really well, albeit we actually had a bit of fortune go our way. But yeah, these sort of games, I thought we might have actually had overall play today, but yeah, we were shocking defensively, and Porteous has really improved in recent times, but he was absolutely horrendous today. Unfortunately, that's probably the player that we sort of know. And yeah, every time, yeah, we had a bit of promise. That step back with the third goal. Yeah, we just summed up a little bit in recent times as well. Yeah, I didn't actually think the midfield was our biggest issue. Both ends of the pitch, and just doesn't cut it for us. And yeah, some particularly poor performances, despite some good ones from Loftus Road. He had a good game as well. We ultimately just yeah, but we're just not dealing with these types of games at all. It's a real issue.
Yeah, David, a lot of concern about the way this team is going about things collectively now. We've seen a spiral in these last few games that have been very troubling. I think you're quite right to make the point about how things are going and the rhythm of the team is not good at this minute. A very troubling pattern for Watford. And David, I do want to thank you very much indeed for your comments. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add to what you've said.
I think obviously, yeah, we've had a few poor games, but when you look at this season as a whole, we always bounce back from a poor match. We've barely won a week where we've struggled a few goals together. So I guess this is now a great opportunity for us to have a point of view to pop it forward years and actually just reset a little bit. We've got a lot of positive things to come on for this team, I think, as well. But yeah, ultimately, it's a hardest point in the season now. And January, obviously started, we've got the opportunity to make things right. So at least we have that opportunity now.
Well, we certainly have an opportunity to, whether we do or not, of course, we will see. David, thank you very much for your comments. As always, take care and Happy New Year once again.
So,
You're welcome. That was David with his points of view about Watford today. They fall to defeat by a score of 3 goals to 1. One thing David said is that we do have an opportunity. I think when you look at games like this, as difficult as it was to watch some of this today, and I missed the first 20 odd minutes because I was still sleeping. Um, as difficult as it is to watch some of these games with Watford, there is always the opportunity to put things right. Obviously, we do have a game that's going to be testing, though. One of my criticisms of this team that I love and that you love so dearly is that we play up or down to the level of our competition. And I think that continued to be the case today, although QPR are a competent side. I was under no illusion about that. I said that the last time we played them before that they were better than their position in the table showed. And I still believe that now. They're in 15th at the moment. I think they are playing a little even bit better than that. But now Watford really are up against it. If they want to play up to the level of their competition, well, they've got an opportunity to do so this coming Saturday against none other than Sheffield United. Sheffield United second in the table now, and Watford will be tested at the Vic. Now, there's an opportunity. If Watford want playoffs, they have to win this game. Simple as. Got to win the game against Sheffield United. It's simple as that. It's not simple, but that is really the mission. And is it going to be mission impossible? Is it going to be mission difficult? Or is it going to be mission accomplished? That's really what we have to look at. Is it going to be one of those three missions? Which one is it going to be for Watford on Saturday at home against the Blades, who beat us pretty well, even though it was a 1-0 scoreline back on September 1st. That's now 3 months ago now, or 4 months ago exactly, since we lost that game to Sheffield United. what kind of Watford's going to show up on Saturday afternoon against the likes of Sheffield United. Now, look, we have gone to QPR. I don't think we played particularly well. I thought we improved in the second half. And look, we always have an opportunity to score goals. What troubles me is what I'm going to repeat to you, fellow Watford supporters. And what that is that we, after scoring, concede these goals so quickly. And I know the old adage, as do you, that we are never more vulnerable than when we've just scored. And we continue to flaunt that adage to a T. 2 games in a row now, we score a goal, and then within 2 or 3 minutes, we give up a goal. And that is another thing that has added to the concerns that I have about this team. Look, I know that there's still players that need to come back. Bonner has not really played. He's had a spell of injury, but we need some stability in that back line now. Pollock has been a good leader, but we need a player that's going to come in and really make things a lot easier for us defensively. And Ryan Porteous is going through whatever he's going through. It's not been good these last 2 games, has it? He's been absolutely shocking for me in our back line. I think there needs to be some adjustments there. I don't think James Morris can really be a starter. I've had some concerns about him too. So there are some concerns. There are opportunities, as David alluded to earlier, but there's some concerns here now. 2 in a row we've dropped again. I think Tom Cleverley had not lost back-to-back games as a Watford manager until recently, until a few weeks ago. And now it's happened again. It has happened again. 2 consecutive losses now in the space of what, 4 days, 4.5 days? Troubling stuff. It's not the end of the world. Teams are going to go through periods like this. So I'm not sitting here thinking, henny penny, the sky is falling. But I am looking at a trend here that is concerning. Our defense has been a problem now. It's been a problem for a long time. But I thought that we had turned the corner a few weeks ago. And now these last 4 or 5 games, it's clear that we haven't. We've now conceded 8 goals in our last 4. We have conceded in 4 games where we've conceded the first goal in the first 10 minutes. That's a concern. We have not been able to ride the momentum off of a goal that we score for long enough. That is a concern. You can't ignore those concerns. It's not me being a doomsayer. It's what we're looking at on the pitch. It's us looking at what with our own 2 eyes we can see. And please, to any Watford fan who thinks this, please do not mistake criticism for not getting behind this team. Any Watford fan who is criticizing with a measure of constructive criticism loves the team. We love the team. And our criticism of this team is not because we are negative. Our criticism is out of love, out of the desire to want to see the team play better and get better results. So for me, my main concern is where we are defending, where our positions are on the pitch, and also what we're doing when we are out of possession. How we are getting caught in transition. We got caught severely in transition from that second goal that QPR scored. That's something that really would be very troubling for me looking at this in the Watford coaching situation, because what's happening to us in transition off the ball when we are out of possession, we are not organized well. We're not able to run back into our defensive shape quickly enough. We get caught too easily on the counter, and we're left way too exposed. So our defensive alignment out of possession, we need to really improve that. I thought that our defensive positioning had improved during the course of the last few games, but it's clear that our alignment has not lately. I want to read out some comments, by the way, on YouTube. Happy New Year to everybody of the Watford persuasion who is watching or listening to the You ORNS post-match on both YouTube and on X. Delighted to have you aboard here. Thank you for taking a part of your January 1st to take some time to listen or watch. Remember, Watford fans, if you have any comments, please leave them on X or have your say, as David has done. Or if you're on YouTube, your comments are welcome there. And what you've done on YouTube is comment. Alan Austin, the first comment of the new year. Thank you, Alan, for that. Alan says the following: where is our defense? Thought the new man was going to improve it. Happy New Year, Omar. Thank you, Alan, for that. It's a concern that you've heard here, and you've heard that many of us here as Watford supporters address the concern about this defense, or at least talk about this concern about our defending. And as you've probably just watched and heard, Alan, I've talked about it here. It's a real problem. Listen, this is not about doomsaying or being negative. Our defending is just not up to par. We have a player in Ryan Porteous who has just gone AWOL, absent without leave. It's a real concern at the minute. And our defending is really what's causing us to lose a lot of these games. And also the lack of clinical finishing, obviously. But the defending is the real problem right now that I think this team needs to focus on. And I think the coaching staff will really need to take a look at. Our defensive alignment is not good. When we're out of possession and when we lose the ball, we are absolutely all over the place. We need to have a bit more discipline defensively. We need to have a bit more of a shape defensively. It's difficult in these games, but I think a lot of this comes down to positioning. It comes down to our overall mentality. When we have scored a goal, we've got to find a way, especially away from home, but in any game, to have 5 to 10 minutes where we can hold down the fort and start to change the balance of the game. Usually, when you score a goal, yes, you are vulnerable, but what you also usually are is a team that has a bit of momentum. And what we don't manage to do, lately at least, is hold on to the momentum that we've got having just scored. We don't hold on to that momentum. We don't build or platform that momentum. And as a result of that failure, we leave ourselves incredibly vulnerable with a defense that I think is short on confidence at the moment, and with a certain sense of, I think we get really skittish after we've just scored. I don't know if it's that we relax. I don't know if it's that we think that we can just turn it on and off. But what happens is that we don't ride out the momentum that we've got. We don't earn that goodwill and bank on it and consolidate it. When you just score a goal wherever you've scored it, I think what many teams would love to do is consolidate that momentum and continue to build on that confidence. But we haven't done that lately. We saw that against Cardiff. I thought the Cardiff game was glaring in that in that respect. Fellow Watford supporters, I thought that that was a really telling point. Georgie equalizes for us against Cardiff, and then within 3 minutes, we're trailing again, right before the half, even worse. And so that's a real concern. Same thing today. We cut the deficit in half. Barr makes a really good run, scores the goal. We should have momentum, but we don't build upon that. We don't build upon and consolidate the momentum having scored, and then we're down within about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. We're trailing it. We're trailing by 3 goals to 1 instead of holding it at 2-1 and continuing to build possession. I think the problem is, one of the problems that I think I can see is that we're just not holding on to the ball well enough. Once we score, we seem to back off again. We don't push that particular advantage and make the away side or the opposition, wherever they may be, we don't make them nervous. We don't put them under pressure. I don't think we gave QPR too many scares. We did have a moment where Barr hit the bar, Bio hit the side netting, I think, or headed the ball just past the post, the wrong side of the post. You like to see Watford players attacking the goal, and in some respects they did in the second half. We did. But Bio needs to be more clinical there. We know that that's been a story for a long time with Bio. But again, be clinical. Be clinical. At least he managed to get his head on the end of the ball, unlike some of our other strikers. But I want to continue to read out your comments on YouTube as well. Happy New Year to everyone. I'm sorry to have to give you a post-match where we've lost to start the brand new year. But that's just the way it goes, isn't it? It's beyond my control and yours. But this is how it goes. I would love to bring something a bit more upbeat, but we have to look at things as they are. I do hope that Watford can bounce back from this, and they will bounce back. Listen, I'm not sitting here saying they're going to start losing a line of games. Every team goes through a slump or two, but there is an opportunity now to look at this game, analyze where you went wrong, and get things ready for Saturday against Sheffield United. I think that should be a motivating force for Watford at this point, a team that is in the top two. We do well against the top teams at home, and we have to be able to look at that game on Saturday as an opportunity to fight back and get 3 points. Yes, we lost our last home game, but we have to really be up for these games. The other obvious thing is the starts. How we start these games really determines whether we win or lose. Let's just face it. How we start these games determines whether we win or lose. That's been true for the vast majority of this season. I think it's been true certainly of these last 3 or 4 games, 5 games. The whole game, we didn't start well. We got a draw. We didn't start well. West Brom was one exception. We started well in that game and played well in that game. Aside from the West Brom game, everything else, if we don't start well in these games, we really, and the Portsmouth game, if we don't start well in these games, apart from those 2 games, West Brom and Portsmouth, we tend to end up losing these games. I think we've lost now. The game against who was it? We lost today. We lost against Cardiff. We lost at Burnley, and in all 3 of those games, we started poorly. Give up a goal against Burnley in the 9th minute. Give up a goal against Cardiff in the 56nd mark, and we give up a goal in the first 5 minutes today. I will read out the rest of your posts on YouTube and anything you've got on X. If you'd like to make a comment, fellow Watford supporters, please do. Hit the request button. Do not be shy. Hit the request button and have a go. Have a conversation. Let's talk about what you are thinking about Watford and the transfer market and the players, who you've liked, who you didn't like today. But Matt on YouTube gives us this. Happy New Year to you, Matt. That was a terrible performance, says Matt on YouTube. Backman should have done so much better with the goals, especially that shot that was straight at him. How the hell does he not save a shot that's right at him? Now, Matt, if you're talking about the first goal, I did not see the first goal. And so for those of us, including myself, who was still sleeping here on the West Coast, here in California, I literally was, when that first goal went in. I didn't start watching the game, didn't wake up until 23 minutes in. So for those of us, specifically myself, who didn't see that goal, Matt, I'd like to hear more from either you, Matt, or anyone else watching or listening about the manner in which that first goal came about for QPR. Obviously, it was in the first 5 minutes. So what you're saying, Matt, is that Backman just did not do well enough with the first goal, perhaps. The second goal was poor. Defense was really poor, and the third goal also, we just got really exploited there. So let me know, Matt, on YouTube, which goal you're referring to. I will say this, Matt, Backman was not one of the brightest sparks today, despite how bright his shirt was in goal. And I like bright colors. I got no problem with that at all, but he was not a bright spark today on the pitch. Some of his goal kicks were just really atrocious today. And I know the conditions were bad. It was raining and cats and dogs out there. Was not the greatest environment weather-wise, but that's the championship. That's English weather. So listen, it's not an excuse. It's really just an observation. Watford played in this a million times. They've played in this kind of weather at Burnley. They played this time of year in these conditions and worse. So it's not the weather that was a problem today. Backman's kicking was. Philip Crouch. Hello, Philip. Happy New Year to you. And Matt, thanks for your comments as well. Philip Crouch, again, Happy New Year, Philip. Hope you're doing well on YouTube. He says this: we have a defensive coach in Paul Robinson, but our defending is woeful. What do we do in training? Same with corners. Also, does Bio stay on for the whole 90 minutes? Question mark there from Philip on YouTube. Yeah, I had Philip given a lot of credit to Paul Robinson in a load of these games when Watford went nearly 3 full games without conceding, because he seemed to get the defensive alignment correct and the shape correct and the positioning correct. Watford were blocking a lot of shots. The defense seemed to really be together on the pitch. It was a team effort defensively. But now, as you've pointed out, the defending is woeful. The last 4 games plus, we've defended really poorly. We've really been poor. I won't put the Plymouth game in this, because I just think those were just 2 great strikes from a former Watford player, Andre Gray, that I don't think the defense really had much to do with. Sometimes you have to tip your hat in situations like that with Plymouth. But if you look after the Plymouth match, and not because I think Bristol City came perhaps after the Plymouth match, that Tuesday night we won that 1-0. But if you look at these last 4 or 5 games, where we're talking Burnley, we're talking the game against Portsmouth, even though we won it. You're talking the game against Cardiff. You're talking the game against QPR today. We have been really poor defensively. That's 8 goals in those last 4 games. Philip, I agree. We have some real problems defensively. And it's interesting you asked the question about training, because I don't know. I really don't know what we're doing in training. Of course, those training sessions we don't get real looks at, for a lot of obvious reasons, I think, Philip. But I think your questions are good ones. Our corners are a problem. We don't beat the first man enough in these corner situations. So listen, I agree with you, Philip. It says you said also has, I think you meant, how does Bio stay on for the whole 90 minutes? With that question that you asked there, Philip, I think that the striking options obviously are very thin. And I think that Tom Cleverley is obviously, and I can understandably, lost confidence in Daniel Jefferson, who has lost confidence in himself. And so I think that's why Bio stays on for the whole 90 minutes. If your question was also how does Bio stay on for the whole 90 minutes, my answer would be strictly because there are no striking options on this team. Rajovic is nowhere to be seen because he's off on a season long at Brondby. And the other option we have, Mr. Jefferson, you can see he lacks confidence. He's been short on it all season long. And as you can see, 2 consecutive games with sitters missed. I think the calculation from the head coach there, Philip, was to keep him on the bench and let him just sit the game out, have him clear his head for this game. And I think you'll see some involvement for Jefferson in some way, shape, or form against his former club, Sheffield United. I think that's what's going to happen, Philip. I think what you'll see on Saturday at the Vig is Daniel Jefferson on the pitch. He won't start the game, but I do think he will play a role in the game against Sheffield United, one of his former employers. He also was formerly employed at Sunderland as well. I expect, Philip, that you'll see Daniel Jefferson on the pitch against Sheffield United on Saturday. I know a lot of us have expressed some real concern about that Daniel Jefferson. I have a little sympathy toward him, but I do feel sorry for him in some ways. But I'm sorry, when you miss sitters, you're going to be benched. And I think Tom Cleverley had to make that move. I've got no problem with Bio being on the pitch, quite frankly, even though, again, he missed a real sitter today, didn't he? At least he got his head on, at least he got his head on the ball, unlike Jefferson. But again, the same result, right? He missed, and he should have scored. But that's why Bio's on the pitch for 90 minutes, Philip. We just don't have enough, really, any options. And that's why this transfer market here in January is going to be important for us. We're going to have to make some moves. I do not know what we can realistically expect, Philip, but we will see what, if anything, Watford do get out of the transfer window for this month. Matt says on YouTube, Pollock was completely ripped apart. He was really struggling to deal with the pace of QPR players down the wing. Yeah, he did have a torrid time today. The whole defense did, but I agree. Matty Pollock, I think, was a little bit overmatched today. He was very much exposed on that side of the pitch that he's on, which is what usually the left side of the right-hand side of the pitch. Pollock usually is on the left-hand side of the pitch. In the middle of the 3, it is usually Sierralta. And I think Sierralta came on, started the game, if I'm not mistaken. And so you had it was a back 3, I think. I'm not quite sure. But Pollock is on the right side of that defense. And yeah, they did come at him a lot in this game. And I don't see that there was a whole lot of adjustments going for Tom Cleverley as far as that was concerned. So yeah, Pollock definitely struggled a bit with some of this. I think that pitch plays really quickly as well. We know that back in the day, if you're of a certain age, Queen's Park Rangers pitch used to be plastic, didn't it? And the ball would bounce and the ball would spin around and all of that. But now you have a conventional turf there. Have you now had for a long time at that ground at Loftus Road, and the ball plays really quickly, and on a slick surface it especially plays quickly. And I think that the defense had a lot of problems with that. Not an excuse, an observation, but there we have it as far as that goes. Thank you, Philip, for your comment And thank you, Matt, for yours, because you just made a comment there about Pollock. It was your comment that I'm responding to. And thank you, Matt, for it. I'm going to read out some more here before going to Instagram on X. Those of you listening on X, we will say goodbye in a few short moments. But before that, I will read out some other comments that Matt has made. The third goal, says Matt on YouTube, was the one that was right at him. Okay, so that's the one that Matt refers to when he's talking about Daniel Batman earlier. Thank you, Matt, for the clarification. The third goal, which was right at him. Yeah, it was hitting his direction. He should have done better. I do agree. The defense got carved open, but he should have done better with that third goal. For some reason, I thought you may have been talking about the first. Matt says also the first goal shouldn't have been a goal in my eyes. It was never a free kick. Both Porteous and Fry was pulling at each other's shirts. More a 50-50 challenge, says Matt. Matt, I'll have to let your comment stand without any real response to it because I just did not see the first goal. But since you did, you have the view that the first goal really should not have been a goal because you say it should never have been a free kick. Well, I'll certainly have to watch that back. I can watch the replay, and I will watch the replay of the first five or so minutes, and I'll see if indeed what I see lines up with what your view is on that. But that is your view, and you have every right to it. Thank you, Matt. And Matt says it was a back three of Pollock, Ciraldo, and Porteous. So yeah, I thought so. Thank you for making that, for confirming that, because it looked like that to me when I was watching the game. Thank you, Matt, for that. Pollock, Ciraldo, and Porteous were the back three indeed. And Pollock, of course, usually takes a position on the right side of that back three, with Ciraldo in the middle and Porteous on the left-hand side. And Porteous just did not do. I thought Porteous was particularly poor again today. Porteous. Unfortunately, look, I think he'll have better days. He had a nice run prior to these last 2 or 3 games. He will bounce back. Look, all of these lads are going to bounce back. Every team goes through a bit of a slump, a bit of a dip. I've got no concern about that because that is normal. The concern I have on this New Year's Day is that our defending has been woeful. It's been really glaring these last 3 or 4 games. When you give up goals in the first 10 minutes of every one of these games, these last 4, and when you fail to build on the momentum you have once you've scored, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, you're conceding again. Yeah, those things are about, I think, mentality now. Those things are about defensive position, but they're also about your mentality. What is your mentality after you score? Do you sit off or do you go for it? You know, a goal should spur you on. But for Watford lately, a goal has caused them to retreat into their shell. We have had moments like that in these seasons where we will score, particularly when we score first, we will sit on a 1-0. And then when we score now, we tend to retreat a little bit. We don't make the most of that momentum. We don't allow for our momentum to carry us forward. We seem to revert back. And that has a lot to do with mentality and the psyche of the team once you scored. So, you know, that's the thing. Those are things that need to be addressed. And I trust that the Watford the back office staff, the coaching staff will do that. The backroom staff will do that. That's what they're there for. They're professionals. I know that Paul Robinson's been getting a lot of positive attention for what he's done with the defense. But as Philip pointed out, the defending has been very poor, especially these last 4 games. And Paul Robinson's got to look at really doing something to change that. Because if I'll give him credit when the defending has been improved, at least, I've got to have some criticisms of Robbo when the defense isn't doing well. But it's not all on Robbo. But Robbo definitely has to now really tweak this defense and do something with it because, you know, the positioning's really poor for us. Really, really poor. But there will be better days ahead. Let's hope. And let's look at Saturday now. That I think Watford will be up for the challenge on Saturday. And I do say this again, we do play up or down to the level of our competition. And I think today we were guilty of playing a little bit down to our level of our competition. But QPR deserved to win the game. It's not to slight QPR. They deserved to win. There's no question about it. They were sharper. They were faster. They were quicker. They were more incisive. They looked very, very dangerous every time they went forward. And they should have had at least 5 or 6 goals in this game. They just missed getting on the end of some very dangerous cross goal passes and strikes. They really tormented us today in this game. I do agree with you, Matt. The performance was really bad. And again, that's now what, three straight games where we've not played well. In fact, a lot of games this season we've not. Just think, if we'd started half of these games better than we have, just think, even if we'd started and got through the first 20 minutes of a game without conceding, think about where we might be. I'm not saying that means we're going to win the games, but think if we had, for a number of these games this season, gone through the first 20 minutes or half hour without conceding, where our whole mindset might be. I know it's what if, and we can't do anything about the past in terms of changing how Watford played those games, but the past informs the future, and the past gives us an opportunity to learn. And in football, it certainly does. And so I expect there will be a lot more learning to be done. I want to say thank you on X to those of you listening. Thank you very much indeed for spending part of your New Year's Day with us here on You ORNS Post Match on X. We'll be heading off to Instagram land very, very soon. But I do want to say goodbye to those of you on X and thank you for the comments there. Thank you very much indeed for your time on this New Year's Day. It has been a pleasure to speak with you and to have your say, to hear from you after this game. It has been a very disappointing finish again for Watford in this game to start New Year's Day, to start 2025 with another defeat. Two in a row now, and Watford losing at home and losing away again. This is going to be a tough road for the playoffs, and I said Watford would finish 8th this season. Before the start of the season, I predicted that. And right now, we could be as low as 8th. If West Bromwich Albion win today, we could be even lower than that before these kickoffs that have just got underway. And I will just say, for those of you, before I do leave you on X, I will say that Burnley and Stoke, Cardiff and Coventry, Leeds and Blackburn, which is a really key game, and West Brom and Preston are all 0-0. All the games that are kicked off at 3 o'clock are at 0-0. Hull take on Middlesbrough, and the massive clash of New Year's Day, Sunderland versus Sheffield United. That is an enormous game. Dying to see how that one turns out. Remember, that was a really wild game just a few weeks ago when Sheffield United won, I think 1-0 in a game where there were two sendings off, if I'm not mistaken. A penalty kick and all kind of missed penalty and all kinds of things. So we'll see what happens at the Stadium of Light. But anyway, that is it for now on X. Will be joining us, please, on You ORNS WFC on Instagram. Remember to subscribe to the You ORNS WFC YouTube channel. Like the videos as well there, please. Thank you for those of you who have done that already. It's off to Instagram land. The final score today was Queen's Park Rangers 3, Watford 1. Watford begin 2025 with a defeat, just like they ended 2024 with. It's on to Sheffield United. We will continue on YouTube. And for X listeners, until Saturday, take care and enjoy the rest of your New Year's Day on X. So, fellow Watford supporters, thank you on YouTube for continuing to follow along. It's a pleasure to have you aboard on this New Year's Day. And of course, as I say, we will continue on Instagram and on YouTube here. It will be with Instagram landers in just a few moments' time. Quadro Bar, the bright spark of the day for Watford, and that is refreshing as he bounces back with a goal after being suspended, of course, for the one game against Cardiff. Well, we are now live on Instagram as well. Happy New Year to all of you on Instagram, fellow Watford supporters. It's a pleasure to see you. Happy New Year. It's the first day of 2025. I hope you're not too hungover today as we get to the post-match here on Instagram and continue along on YouTube. Omar here in the brand new year. I do hope that you are well. I do hope that you have been able to celebrate bringing in the new year in style. I do hope that you're safe and sound. And if you stayed at home and brought the new year in that way, that's good as well. Nice and safe to do it that way as well. But Watford did not bring in the new year very well, did they? today at Queen's Park Rangers, as Watford were beaten easily without really any effort, really. Queen's Park Rangers dusted off our lads today by a score of 3-1. And on YouTube, the Watford Way, Happy New Year to you, Watford Way, says the following: goodness me, woeful performance. That about sums it up very succinctly indeed. The Watford Way, thank you for your comment. I mean, what the Watford Way is saying is pretty succinct. And he uses just what? 4 words to describe how poor Watford were today. And I'm going to make that the You ORNS Watford FC fan comment of the match. And that was from the Watford Way, who starts off in 2025 with as succinct a comment and a description of this Watford game as you possibly can get. Goodness me, says the Watford Way, woeful performance. Short, sweet, and to the point. That is what you do when you spell succinct. And the Watford Way, you've done that today. Thank you for your comment. That is the You ORNS Watford FC fan comment of the game. So, yeah, it was like that, Watford Way. We just were nowhere. I missed the first 23 minutes because I was still sleeping. It was 4:30 in the morning here. And for some reason, and I normally do get up for these 12:30 kickoffs, but 4:30 in the morning on New Year's Day is a tough one. And I was surprised, quite frankly, that the kickoff was at 12:30 on New Year's Day. Um, it's I don't know what the play. I don't think the players are out celebrating. Trust me, on New Year's morning to bring in the new year on New Year's Eve. But that's a rough ask. 12:30. Luckily, they don't have to travel too far. It's only a 25-mile jaunt, so it's a local game. But 12:30 in the afternoon on New Year's Day, I think it's rough on anyone. I think it's rough on anybody, whether you're here in California like I am, or whether you are in London or in Hertfordshire or anywhere else in England, because I'm sure that you, as a Watford supporter, celebrated in some way. You brought the new year in, whether you were at home or whether you were out on the town, or maybe you went to sleep early. A lot of people do get into sleep early on New Year's Eve and wake up to a brand new year, which is what a lot of people actually do. I was one of those who was out on the town. I think that's the reason why I got up late, quite frankly, for this game today, out celebrating and having a good time. Yeah, that's the reason. I mean, when you get back home about 2 hours before the game starts, yeah. So you're looking at someone who's had barely 2 hours sleep. So I did get up about 20 minutes late for the game. But the bottom line is that whether the kickoff is at 12:30, 2:30, 1:30, 3 o'clock, it doesn't matter if it's 9 a.m. You've got to be ready for these games. You're professional footballers. And were Watford ready to play this game? I don't think they were, quite frankly. But the bottom line for me is that you've got to be switched on from minute one. And Watford are not switched on in these games now. We've now gone from a team that had gone almost 3 full games without conceding to a team now that for these last 4 games has conceded a goal in the first 10 minutes each time. That's a team that's not switched on. That's a team that mentally is not switched into the game, not plugged into the game mentally. I think that's the thing I didn't say on X earlier, is that Watford as a team are not plugged in mentally in these games to start with. And again, how you start does inform and can inform how you finish. And with Watford today, they just did not get the job done because they weren't switched on. I don't think Watford was switched on for a majority of the game. They showed signs of life in the second half. Quadro Bar gave you some fight. I thought he was exceptional today in many respects. But one player is not going to be enough for you to get a result. One player getting it done is not going to be enough, especially when you're playing away from home, and especially when you've got the likes of QPR, who again are a better team than they've shown, and a team that deserved to win easily. It just was not strong enough from us today. So, unfortunately for Watford, there are some real problems defensively. I think mentality-wise, the problems are creeping back in again. Our defending is all over the place. We're playing as individuals in defense. I don't think we build enough momentum after we score. That is a real issue for us. And we have to start to improve the manner in which we play these games. And especially, by the way, improve the manner of how we deal with the game once we have scored in the game. Now we have a real crisis of confidence once we score. It seems as if scoring actually has a negative effect on us because we seem to either retreat or we are unable to build momentum off of scoring. Usually when you score a goal, your tails are up, you build your momentum, you have the ability to platform off of scoring. But it just didn't happen today. Watford, just like they did against Cardiff, could not hold on to that nugget of scoring and hold on to the feeling of confidence that you get once you score. Didn't hold on to that, didn't build on that, didn't consolidate off that momentum, didn't give their momentum anything. And unfortunately, we've seen it now in two consecutive games. Within 2.5 minutes, both games, Watford give up a goal right after they've scored. I know that you're never more vulnerable than when you've scored, but to give up a goal so easily, it really beggars belief. And that's my concern. Why is it Watford are giving up goals so soon after they've scored? And why is it Watford are conceding goals so early in these games for 4 games in a row now? That has to do a lot with mentality and not being plugged in mentally. I think that there is, and there's always been this, I think, at Watford for a long time in our men's first team. Mentally, we have a real challenge just switching into these games and staying plugged in and locked in. And so that is really my deepest concern. Our mental state at the moment has not been positive at all. It's not been very positive. There are sporadic moments. There are moments when the players are looking really lively. There were moments like that today against QPR, but generally speaking, just like in the Cardiff game, not nearly enough, not nearly enough. And let me just look at the statistics from this contest today. I think that can tell, I think, a deeper story about how Watford were looking today. If you look at the stats, QPR 44%. Again, we had 55% of the possession. It doesn't matter how much percentage of the possession you have. Possession is only 9/10 of the law. The other tenth is scoring goals. And Watford aren't doing that right now. Not nearly enough. Watford scored in the game, but it was when Watford were already 2-0 behind. And at that point, when Quadro Bar cuts the deficit in half, you have to begin to consolidate off of that. And Watford didn't. 2 minutes later, they're down 3-1 again. And you saw the celebration from the QPR manager, Cifuentes, after that third goal, because he knew the game was over there. He knew the game was done. And I knew the game was over there as well. When that third goal went in so soon after Watford scored to cut the deficit, the game's over. Watford's momentum gone. Any semblance of it gone. And no hope for a real fight back there. And then really it's about damage limitation after that. And people can talk about the subs. I thought Klebs did wait too long to make changes in the game. Once you saw that Watford were trailing 2-0 at that point in the first half, I think changes need to be made. Whether at halftime or whether before the half, I think you make them at halftime. Klebs didn't make any changes at halftime that I remember. And I think he waited until 65 minutes in or whatever it was, 58 minutes in, whatever it was, before he made the first changes for Watford. He made a triple change that I don't think really yielded too much fruit, although that it was lively. But I think he should have made those subs a little bit earlier. Had he made them at halftime, I think we could have given ourselves a chance. But it just wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. Let's look at the rest of these match stats. QPR 44% of the possession. Watford, as I said, 55. If you look at the shots, the total number of shots, what is interesting is that QPR had 9 shots in total. Watford had 12. 12 shots. Touches inside the box, 21 for QPR, 18 for Watford. Goalkeeper saves, QPR 2, Watford 2. Remember, Cardiff's goalkeeper didn't have a single save to make in the entire game last time out. But today he had two. If you're a QPR goalkeeper, he had two. Harrison Allardyce, Happy New Year to you joining us on Instagram. Hello there, Harrison. Happy New Year. Not a good start to the new year, however, Harrison, for your Hornets as they fell to defeat, as you know, 3-1. Reading out the stats for those of you on YouTube and Instagram. And as for the rest of the stats, Watford had 6 corners, QPR had 2. You know, there is something to suggest that Watford gave this game some kind of effort, but it was not nearly good enough. Happy New Year, says Harrison Allardyce on Instagram. Porteous, Backman out, Harrison says. And can't disagree with the comment from Harrison. I don't see how you can disagree with that. Harrison, thank you for the comment there, and Happy New Year again to you. Yeah, Porteous has been dreadful lately. These last 2 games, at least, he had a run, Harrison and everyone else watching, where he had been quite good. But these last 2 games, he's been abysmal. He was nowhere to be seen against Cardiff. He seemed like he didn't want to be involved in defending against Cardiff. And today, he seemed like he couldn't care less. Just absolutely MIA, missing in action, was Ryan Porteous. Ryan Andrews has not seen any game time today because he was poor the previous game. And you see why Ryan Andrews isn't starting these games anymore. You know, obviously there's something that the manager has seen with Ryan Andrews as well. But Porteous has been awful, and Daniel Batman today was a dog's dinner. You know, someone on YouTube, I think it's Matt, who said earlier that Backman really should have done better on the 3rd goal. And I seem to remember the goal was struck straight, the ball was struck straight at him, and he did not do well enough with that. The defending was awful to begin with, but Backman's kicking today was poor, and his kicking's been poor. Look, we know he's not the greatest distributor. He's a great shot stopper, but he wasn't today, and the distribution was awful. There was a goal kick that went straight into the stands. It was crazy, and I know that the conditions were bad, but that's not an excuse. You're a professional goalkeeper. You're a professional footballer. You can't kick the ball from one end to the other straight into the stands. It didn't even go anywhere near a Watford player, and that lets you down in these games. You can't even fashion a route one. If you want to fashion a route one attack, at least kick the ball in the general direction of Watford players down the field, Daniel. Oh, for heaven's sake, man. And that's the thing that really gets you. So, Harrison, I completely agree. But the reality is, Harrison, the squad is so thin at the minute. Unless there's something in the transfer market, Harrison, that says that we can get a defender instead of Porteous, Ogbonna, or whomever. Ogbonna has not played very much, and he's just coming back from injury. And unless we can get someone, but Ogbonna plays in the middle of a 3, or he's a middle pairing of the 4 or a middle of the 3. That's Ogbonna. But unless there's something with how they can maybe reshape that back 3, Porteous can't be a backup. Porteous cannot be part of the starting back 3 in these games. There was a time, I think, when Klebs had him coming off the bench. He needs to put him back on the bench again. And if he has to bring him off the bench, bring him off the bench in a situation where we've got a comfortable lead. Because I think that for some reason, Porteous has just gone. I don't know where he's gone to, whether he's on the planet of Mars or Venus or Mercury. I don't know where he is, but he is not on planet Earth these last couple of games, and it is a concern. Thank you very much, Harrison. And as for Daniel Backman, Backman is too much of a quote-unquote prized asset within the Watford hierarchy. He's the club captain. He's got this long contract. While Watford fans like yourself and maybe even myself would like to see Jonathan Bond back in the start for Watford in between the sticks, the reality is that Tom Cleverley is not going to have that happen unless, God forbid, injuries happen. And then you have to put in Jonathan Bond, who's really waited his turn after having a run in the side earlier in the season, but now really does not have any run in the side. But you will see Jonathan Bond, I can tell you, in the Cup game. I will bet you'll see him next week against Fulham when we head to Craven Cottage. We really don't have very much travel, as you've seen in these last few games. Watford don't travel very far in these games, right? If you look at these games, the last few, Watford have not had to travel very far. We have a load of games at home and we have a few away, but they aren't very far away on the away end. I mean, 2 trips to West London. We have a West London trip that we've just had, and we'll be back in West London in 8 days' time to play Fulham again, to play Fulham. And so that's how it goes. Really local travel for Watford. So yeah, it's a real problem. And Harrison says, I genuinely think Tom needs to either bring a defensive coach in or step down to number 2, and we get someone who knows how to defend. Not blaming Tom, but it's just not working. Harrison, if you are still on Instagram, can you clarify something for me with your comment? Are you saying that step down to number 2? Are you saying that Tom Cleverley should step down from head coaching to a number 2 role in the Watford coaching staff? Is that what you're saying, Harrison? I would love to get your clarification on this if you are still watching us here on YouTube. Excuse me, on Instagram. Thank you. Lewis, hello to you. Happy New Year to you, Lewis. Happy New Year, Harrison, as well. Happy New Year, Joe. Joe Larkin says, "You Orns, another poor performance." Yes, indeed, another poor performance it was. Happy New Year, Joe. And he gives us a moderate "You Orns" today, not the usual "You Orns," because, of course, Watford did not get the business done. And not only did they not get the business done, as Joe Larkin on Instagram rightly points out, we were woeful, absolutely poor today. The Watford Way pointed that out as well on YouTube, and pointed out how poor we have been in these games, especially this one today. We've come off of the back now of 2 very poor performances in these games. Poor against Cardiff, poor again today against QPR. Defending poor. We start these games poorly. We can't get through 10 minutes without conceding anymore. It's just unbelievable. Can't get through 10 minutes of a game now without conceding. Can't go 5 minutes in a game after we've scored without conceding. We are in really messy waters right now with our defending. If you can't go 5 minutes into the game without conceding, and you can't go 3 minutes in a game after you've scored without conceding, that's a real problem. The defense has to change somehow. Desperately need a striker. Bio was awful today, says Joe Larkin. Yeah, Bio did not have one of his best games. He should have scored. He was busy, but he was busy making misses. I think the only consolation, which is probably a tongue-in-cheek jab at Daniel Jefferson, which I shouldn't be doing, is that at least Bio was able to make contact with the ball, which is something that Daniel Jefferson did not do these last 2 games. But nonetheless, even so, the same result ensued, didn't it? Because Bio headed the ball the wrong side of the post. And that's not going to get us a goal. So Bio now, I think he's gone, 3 or 4 games without scoring, maybe 3 games without scoring. 2 or 3 games, 3 games maybe without scoring now. He still has 9. That's the way that's gone for us. We do need strikers. We do need players in here. I don't know how many Watford are going to get for January. I would say, if anything, we'll be lucky to get 2. And then we have to see what kind of players, because January is not a great time to get bonanza signings. And Watford aren't going to get some blockbuster signing. That's just not who we are. And players are not going to be flocking here for that. We're going to have to get a player who either is on the outs of the Premier League club or is not getting any playing time in the Championship. That's really what we're going to have to be getting. We'll see how things shake out. Now, here's what Harrison says, by the way. Thank you for the comment, Joe, and Happy New Year once again to you. I'll read out your YouTube comments in a moment, because there is an additional comment that has just come in that I want to address as well. Harrison Allardyce, who is on Instagram. Thank you, Harrison, once again for your comments. That is what I am saying. I love Tom. And this is Harrison clarifying something about a comment he made earlier, where he seemed to be saying that he wanted Tom Cleverley to step down from his role as the Watford head coach and take the number 2 position in the coaching staff. So here's what Harrison says, and that is indeed what he is saying. He wants Tom Cleverley to step down to the number 2 position in the coaching staff and have someone else take over the head coaching duties at Watford. I love Tom, Harrison continues, but just don't think he knows anything about defending. Would love him to stay head coach, but he needs to bring someone in. It might just be a lack of quality, but I doubt Gino is going to be buying any sort of quality in this window. Yep, those are the Harrison Allardyce comments on Instagram. Thank you for those comments, Harrison, and thanks for your clarification about what you were saying around Tom Cleverley. And so Harrison says that Tom Cleverley should step down as the Watford head coach, but maintain a position in the Watford coaching staff. For me, I think Tom Cleverley has done a fine job as head coach. He's going through some bumps and bruises at the minute with this team. I do think that the defending, look, everybody has to take accountability. I will agree with you there, Harrison, on that, because look, it's not just the defenders, it's about the defensive positioning, the alignment, and who is responsible for that. Apart from the defense, is obviously the defensive coach. And it's also ultimately the head coach who gets the ultimate responsibility for what happens on the pitch. And so, yeah, Tom Cleverley's got to take some blame and some stick for that. So does Paul Robinson. Robbo does too. Robbo's been a darling. We love him. He was great for Watford as a player. And yes, he's done some good things, had done previously some good things in the defense earlier a few weeks ago. But we're seeing now this defense unravel. And Robbo and Klebs have got to take some stick for that. Simple as. They don't get. If we're going to criticize the defense, we're not going to only criticize the defending on the defense and not talk about the people who are responsible for that. The defense is responsible, but so is the manager. So I understand what you're saying, Harrison, and thank you for the comment. I do really believe that Klebs overall has done things right. We're just going through a bad patch right now. It's a worrying patch, though, Harrison. I share your concern. It's a worrying patch to go through 4 games and concede 8 goals in those 4 games. All of these goals to start these games in the first 10 minutes. It's a worrying sign. And then we can't hold on to the goal that we score for more than 2 minutes before we concede again. So that is a real problem on this team. I don't care what anybody tells. It's not being negative. It's calling it as you see it. We love this team. We get behind the team. And when you get behind the team, you can also criticize them. That's also getting behind the team, and that's an act of love. If you didn't care about this Watford side, you wouldn't criticize them at all. You just wouldn't care. You wouldn't say a thing. But you know what? We care about our team. And when the team is defending as woefully as this, performing as poorly as this, we have every right to have a go at them. Doesn't mean we aren't getting behind them. I think some people confuse criticism with somehow not getting behind the lads. We are behind the lads. This is why we are behind the lads, right? Because if you weren't behind the lads, we wouldn't say anything. Oh, we lost 3-1 and we move on to Sheffield United. Well, we've got to look at the problems that have caused us to lose 3-1. It wasn't that QPR were out of this world. If we lost 3-1 today and QPR were just dynamic and just competent all over the pitch and just played 10 out of 10, you tip your hat. But we're not tipping our hat to QPR. QPR deserve to win. Yeah, they deserve to win. But I'm not tipping my hat to QPR. A lot of this is self-inflicted, and it continues to be week after week, game after game. And we've seen this now twice in 4 days, twice in 4.5 days. We've seen the same issue with our defending. Can't hold on to a goal that we score. Cardiff, same thing. Score a goal. Georgie scores. 2.5 minutes later, Cardiff score again. It's unacceptable. Today, Bar scores. 2 minutes later, QPR score. Unacceptable defending by any stretch. Thank you, Harrison, for the comments. And one more from Joe Larkin. Midfield was also extremely poor. I'd like to see TDB start to play now. He's back from injury. Yeah, I'd like to see that as soon as possible. Pronto, Joe. I would like to see that pronto, real fast. I want to see that yesterday, Joe. I absolutely agree. When TDB is fully fit to play the games, he's got to get in there. He's been off for at least 2.5 months now with a knee problem that's been continuous. But if he's back training and if he's back there, put him in the games, get him involved. The midfield was a lot better with him in it. Loser, who was injured or has some knee issues, is now out. You see that was something that we missed. We missed him. But that's a good point there, Joe. Midfield also did not do us any favors today. Harrison says, don't want to disrespect Tom, says Harrison on Instagram. Thank you, Harrison, for your comment, as he's done way better than anything anyone thought we'd do. But it's nearly every week, especially away, says Harrison. We haven't had a clean sheet away from home. 3 to QPR is embarrassing. Yeah, that's a really noteworthy comment from Harrison. Thank you, Harrison, for making that comment. We've not had a clean sheet away from home. I think you're absolutely right. I'm thinking of all the games now this season away from home. No clean sheet. Harrison, you're correct on that. We've not had any clean sheets. We conceded 2 to Sheffield Wednesday in the 6-2 win, right? We lost to Preston 3-0. We drew 2-2 with Plymouth. We lost 1-0 to Sheffield United. I'm bringing out all the games off the top of my head now. 4-1 we lost to Norwich. 3-0 we lost to Luton. 1-0 we lost to Swansea. 2-1 we lost to Leeds. I'm thinking of every game away in the championship this season off the top of my head. And Harrison, you're correct. 3-1 to QPR, 2-1 to Burnley. Every game we played away failed to keep a clean sheet. 3-2 win against Millwall. Can't keep a clean sheet away from home. And that's why. That's another reason why, Harrison, we continue to fail away from home. And that's why we are not making the playoffs. I predicted 8th to start before the season began. And right now, I think we're going to be in 8th. So I think West Bromwich Albion may be ahead in their game. Let's have a quick sneak at that for right now. And West Bromwich Albion, actually, it's still, I think, still 0-0 there. So let me have a quick look again at the scoreline, because I'm not quite sure about that. Yeah, it is West Brom are up. I thought so. I didn't look at the score before. I was saying I bet West Brom are up. Looks like they're up. I think they're up, and they are 1-0. West Bromwich Albion leading now 1-0 over Preston North End. Yeah, that's predictable. West Bromwich Albion are probably going to go above us in the table, which will mean for the Watford supporters that we will end up going to at least 8th, and we are currently 8th right now. That's exactly where I thought we'd finish. But of course, we've still got, goodness gracious me, we've still got 20 some odd games left in the season. What, 22 games? Long road, Watford now falling to 8th at the moment. West Bromwich Albion into the top 6 right now in the live table in 5th place. And so, Harrison, you got a point there to make. I mean, there's a problem with the defending. And I hope that Gino does not do anything rash here. I really hope not. Tom Cleverley has been a good manager. I know there's going to be a lot of rumors and conjecture, but I thought what was really revealing to me, Harrison, and I'll read out your comment on YouTube, D. Francis, coming up, I promise, in a few moments. What really was revealing was when Tom Cleverley really dragged his senior players, and he was talking about Sissoko in principle, really revealing after the Burnley game, and he was not happy with that. Something about that Burnley performance obviously was awful performance, but he particularly made note of the senior players in the team who had not been pulling their weight, didn't want to make a tackle. I think that's very revealing. And I think that if anything were to happen in terms of Tom Cleverley's position, Harrison, you might want to look back perhaps to that Burnley game. I thought that was notable, how upset Clevs was. Notable, and he allowed that to happen. Let people see that publicly. Notable how he digged out his senior players, and he was principally talking again about Sissoko, who I think has been poor this season after a good first couple of games. He really went off the ball against Sheffield United, and he's really not been back to anything like he was in his first iteration with us a couple of seasons, well, back in the Premier League days when he was with us. But I think that Burnley game is going to be a marker no matter what happens, whether Clevs is here or not. And I think Clevs will stay through the end of the season. I predict that. I'm still on for that, and I think it's going to be the case. But that noteworthy performance, the poor performance at Burnley, I think could end up being a key in all of this. But thank you, Harrison, for that. It is embarrassing, 3 goals against QPR. There's no way that should have happened. But you know what, Harrison? It could have been 6 goals to QPR today. If you look at that game, you watched the game like I did, like everyone has. There were some moments where QPR should have gotten the end of some crosses that were fired, balls fired across the Watford goal, and they just missed a touch. A touch would have been needed, and that would have been 4. They could have scored another 3 or 4 in this game. Harrison, they could have. So look, we got very fortunate in some ways. In some ways, we could have been 5 or 6-1 losers in this game. today. Here we go with the comment from D. Francis. Thank you for being patient, because I do want to address what D. Francis has to say. And here he says it, and I want to get to it right now. The point that is made, and let me read out your comment, D. Francis. It's structural, organizational, or the defense isn't good enough. I think, and that's D. Francis. Let me reread that. And this is what D. Francis on YouTube says. It's structural, it's organizational, or the defense isn't good enough. I think it's a mix of all three of those, D. Francis. And thank you for your comment, and Happy New Year to you. I think it's all three of these things. I think the structural part of this is what the positioning is on the pitch and how Watford are able to rotate back into a defensive position after the ball has been given up, and when they are facing a transition attack or counter attack by Queen's Park Rangers. What is the positioning, and where are the players running into the spaces for? Are they sitting off too much? One thing I've noticed, D. Francis, if you're watching, is that Watford, even in games where they were winning some of these games more recently, they weren't getting tight enough to the attacking players that they were defending against. I noticed this in a number of games in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and these are games that Watford won. The game against Portsmouth, they didn't sit tight enough. The game against Bristol City, they didn't sit tight enough to the defenders. They still got a clean sheet out of that Bristol City game. But I've noticed in recent weeks, Watford have not got tight enough to opposition players, especially at the Vic. And it showed. It really showed. They gave up too much space. The game against West Brom that we won, the same thing. We allowed West Brom players to have free shots and open lanes to goal. And when you give a opposition player an open lane to take a shot at goal on, it's a possibility it goes in. And Jason Malumbi, you remember that game against West Brom a few weeks back. He had an open shot. Ball ricocheted to him. Clear view. Nobody ran for the follow-up to close that ball down, to close that player down. He had a completely unmolested view of goal. Pardon me for using that language. He had a completely, let me put it this way. He had a completely unobstructed view of goal. Nobody chased down and closed down on Jason Malumbi. He shot the ball from 15 yards out. It found its way into the back of the net. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Same thing with Cardiff. Open shot, no closing down of these shots, of these players. No one willing to take one for the team. Have a ball in their face. I know it's not pleasant to get a ball in your face or in your stomach or in your nether regions, but you've got to take one for the team. Defend doggedly. You've got to sacrifice yourself on the altar when you're defending. And Watford aren't doing that. So I think it's structural, organizational. Yes, I think that ties into the structure because, again, we don't have a cohesive shape when we defend now. We're all over the map. We are all out of position. So that's part of the structure and organizational. And the defense just isn't good enough. We have a very thin defense. Sierralta wasn't even starting these games until today. And he was starting sporadically. Then he got injured. Then he was cautioned. Then he, missed matches on suspensions and all the rest of it. But this was not Sierralta's fault today. The whole defense wasn't good enough. And that's been the case for a long time, even when the defense had a spell just a few weeks ago, a few months back, a few short weeks ago, actually, when we went almost 3 whole games without conceding a goal. The game against Hull, that was where that ended, right? We had a 0-0 at QPR back then. We went to the game against Hull. We traveled there, and we were a few minutes away from getting a clean sheet. Hull scored in, the 85th minute or so, 84th minute. We almost went 3 full games without conceding, and since then, we can't stop conceding goals. The tap continues to run, and so I'm very concerned about that. I think, D. Francis, it is a combination of all three. Structural, organizational, and the defense isn't good enough. It's definitely all three. It's not or, it's and, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the Watford defense goes. So it has been a really disappointing game to start 2025. The very first day of 2025 ends with Watford defeat, just like the very last game of 2024 ended in a Watford defeat. So that's 2 in a row now for Clevs and Watford. It's only the second time this season that Watford have lost consecutive games in the Championship. In fact, it's only the second time since Klebs has been the manager that Watford have lost 2 consecutive games. And so, look, if you've been manager for 10 months like Klebs has done, and you've only lost 2 games in a row twice during that 10-month period, you're doing something right. For me, I would not be looking at demoting Tom Cleverley to a number 2 position. I would look at having a defensive coach come in and really specialize on defending. And I understand Paul Robinson had done a good job a few weeks ago, but a few weeks ago was a long time ago as far as this Watford defense is concerned, because this Watford defending and this defense does not have a clue. We started the season conceding goals in the first 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and now we are in the middle of the season doing the same thing again. It's rearing its ugly head again. And that has got to be addressed before the Sheffield United game on Saturday, because Sheffield United are going to score on the opportunities that QPR missed out on today. And mark my words, when you're playing Sheffield United, you have to watch every ball that comes in, and you have to mark your man and stay tight to your man. You cannot let Sheffield United alone for a second, because they will punish you. And I know that they have struggled, Sheffield United, lately. They've dropped points in each of their last 2 games, both of which were at home. But now they head to Sunderland. This game will be very, very closely watched by a number of Watford personnel today. In fact, I'll be, as a Watford supporter, watching that game when that comes up a little bit later on tonight at the Stadium of Light, Sunderland against Sheffield United. That's going to be a really important game for the top of the table. And a really important game from a Watford perspective, because you want to see how Sheffield United approach the game. And let's see how our former Watford manager, Chris Wilder, does as far as that will be concerned. It should be a very interesting return for him to the Vic. I think Chris Wilder was well liked in the main by Watford fans. There's some Watford fans that didn't care for Chris Wilder, but there were a number of Watford fans, I think I would say most Watford fans, who were very much liked Chris Wilder and liked his honesty, which is, I was one of them who liked him for his honesty. And he wasn't afraid to confront and challenge the players publicly as well as privately. We'll see how he does tonight, but also, of course, we'll see how the reception. I think he'll get a nice reception from Watford fans before the game. But of course, Watford, once the game starts, it will be all business, of course, for Watford against Sheffield United, which I think Watford will actually play better in. But then again, I thought Watford would play better today against QPR, and they actually, I would say, arguably played worse than they did against Cardiff. Matt says this on YouTube: just looked at the away table form from the 12 away games we've played so far. We've won 2, drawn 2, and we've lost 8, says Matt, with goals for us 16 goals for and against 26. Yeah, I think that is the handwriting on the wall there, Matt, for a number of reasons. That is a stunning statistic. Now, Matt has just looked that up, and I haven't looked it up independently, but I don't have any reason to think that Matt would be giving information that's false. That's a staggering thing. We have won just 2, Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday. Those are our 2 away victories this season. We scored at least twice in both those games, but we also conceded twice in both those games. So the defending has been poor. Defending's been poor. The 2 draws we had, Hull and Plymouth. And I think those 2 games came in consecutive games, I think. And we lost to 8. I can name all those losses off the top of my head. We lost today. We lost against Luton, Norwich, lost against the likes of Sheffield United, Leeds, Preston, Swansea. I mean, I can name all the games. We lost too many. Burnley. We lost too many games away from home. 8 defeats. It's a lot of games to be losing away. I think that's all of the ones that they played away from home that they've lost. Right off the top of my head. I said them all just now. We lost to Sheffield United, right? Leeds we lost, right? Burnley we lost. Swansea we lost. Preston we lost. Norwich, Luton. And we lost today at QPR. I think that's all 8 of the games. It's not good enough. It's not good enough for playoffs. And I said the reason why Watford wouldn't make the playoffs is the away form is absolutely critical, and we're not beating teams who are above us in the table when it comes to these away games. At home, we have been, but not away. So I have really got some concerns about the defending. Matt, thank you for the stat. That is going to be it now for this edition of the You ORNS post match on both Instagram and on YouTube. I do want to thank you for your time on this New Year's Day. 2025 began the way that 2024 ended for Watford Football Club as the men's first team fall to a 3-1 defeat today. And QPR really should have scored more than the 3 they scored. Lots to think about now. Bar was very good. That's the one bright spot you take from the game as a Watford supporter. But really, we've got a lot of work to do defensively. And I am very concerned about the defending. Do you think Tom Cleverley's job is in jeopardy? I think it's really insulting, or insane, or both to even ask that question. I don't think his job is in jeopardy at all. But what I do think needs to happen is a defensive coach needs to come in, and there needs to be some tweaking, some real tweaking with that defending. And I think Paul Robinson needs to improve on what he was doing earlier, because these last few games, the defense has not responded whatsoever. Okay, that is going to be it for now. Thank you very much indeed. My name is Omar. Happy New Year to each and every one of you watching. I really appreciate your time. And those of you on X earlier, once again, thank you very much for listening and contributing. Happy New Year to you all on this first day of January, the first day of 2025. Let's hope that the fourth day of 2025, which would be this Saturday, is a lot better than what we've experienced here today. And that's a home match against Sheffield United. A big test for Watford and a chance for revenge and a chance to get back into the thick of things in the playoffs. And Matt says that he's also checked that it's 22 games left of the season to go. And indeed, it is 22 more games to go in the season of 46 in the championship. Thank you all for watching. The final score once again from Loftus Road in West London was QPR 3, Watford 1. Lots of work to do for the Golden Boys and for the coaches in the coaching staff. The final score again, 3-1 to QPR. Watford have dropped back-to-back games now in this campaign for only the second time this season and only the second time in Tom Cleverley's tenure. Cleverley has a lot of goodwill. And look, the fact that he had a 17-game unbeaten run is going to be a really good thing for him, because it will keep him from any kind of sacking, I think. But again, we never know what Gino might come up with. Who knows? But look, that game is in the books. Watford on to the game against Sheffield United this Saturday. Thank you very much. Don't forget to join me on YouTube with a subscription. Just subscribe right now to the You ORNS WFC YouTube channel and like the videos there. Thank you very much for doing that. And also, of course, on Instagram at You ORNS WFC and on X at You ORNS WFC as well. Follow there. There will be a podcast episode that you should find at some point tomorrow morning. Watford. I'll be talking about this game and the Cardiff game and going into some detail about a couple of things that I've talked about here and some other things that I've not really talked about yet pertaining to this Watford men's first team. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Happy New Year to you all. And until Saturday, take care, be well, and enjoy the rest of your January 1st.